What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel?
First thing I see is water. I feel kind of a calm, it's like a breeze.
Okay. Tell me more.
I feel like I'm standing kind of on a, what looks like a, feels like a, some type of sand. And it's just me right now, but I sense there's other people here.
Okay. So tell me more. What makes you feel like there's other people there?
I'm just sensing it.
Okay. And what do you sense? That you're not alone?
Yeah,
There's
I'm not
others?
alone. Yeah,
Okay.
there's others.
Okay. So look around and tell me more details about what you see or what you feel about this
Feels
place.
like, yeah, this place feels like home. Definitely feels like a home.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what does
Feels,
your home look like?
it has a,
It has sand.
to me kind of sand, lots of water around. Um, lots of, I'm getting the sense too with the people, lots of love and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, these people feel like this place feels like home and like family.
Wonderful.
Um,
What else is there in this beautiful place? What does it look like? What does it feel like?
lots of lots of trees around, foliage. It doesn't feel like earth though. It feels somewhere different.
Okay. What color is the sky?
The sky looks kind of a bluish. It looks very blue, and then I also looks like I see looks like more than one, like a moon,
Like a what?
like more than one moon.
More
It
than
looks
one
like in
moon.
the distance. Yeah.
Nice. Wonderful. And are the trees, what do the trees look like? Are they similar to those found on Earth or are they different?
Similar to those on Earth. Um, much of what is here is on Earth.
Okay.
Lots of stuff has been planted, so it's very much very Earth-like. Um,
And the more you describe it, the more you start seeing those beings that you feel are there with you.
yeah, I'm looking around, and they definitely seem familiar faces. They look very human-like. They're very, I think, very humanoid looking, angular. The faces look very angular.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see my significant other. He's here.
Wow, that's wonderful. So can you see him clearly?
Yeah, I can. He's got kind of brownish hair, very tall, kind of green eyes. People are here kind of wearing sort of flowing material, kind of very kind of light material, but on the ship we wear uniforms. We're like blue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, they're kind of looks very familiar. This is where I'm from.
It's wonderful. And
Beautiful planet.
what is he doing? Is he doing anything specific?
Just kind of walking around, and I feel like I'm walking around and hugging family. It was like very much like family.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been a long time, and happy to see you.
That's wonderful. So they're welcoming you.
Yes.
That's so nice.
Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up.
That's wonderful. So what else can you tell me about this beautiful scene?
I definitely see there's some sort of ships that are around, and the travel is different. There's no roads like we have here. It's traveling by ships, and the environment is very clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, air feels really good.
Wonderful.
I see round ships, kind of look roundish.
Mm-hmm.
Some are long, and then I see so looking around, so it's like structures.
Mm-hmm.
So these buildings are some are more communal areas,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not like on Earth where they're kind of crammed together in areas. These are very kind of separated.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
What do they look like they're made out of?
Kind of looks like I don't know if it's wood. I don't think it's a wooden structure. It kind of seems to me more like a different material, more like some kind of stone maybe, and some of it feels kind of, I get the sense it's an organic sort of substance that it's made out of. It almost, if you just looked at it, it kind of looks like some of it also might be steel, but it's not. It's some type of different material.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very beautiful, very open.
Mm-hmm. And where is it? Yeah, go ahead.
People live more within nature than we do here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
More in tune with nature.
Yes. Yeah. So this place that you are standing on, you're still on the beach?
On the beach, yes, and it looks
Okay.
very much, yeah, like um, there's islands around, and then looks like a lot of land. But this area that I'm in, or I've lived near, is near the water.
Okay. So you can see all those beautiful buildings from the beach then.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a, like, I know that I've traveled and I've been to some of these places too.
Wonderful. And is your family still around you?
Yes, they're all here.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I want you to try to communicate with them. I want you to try to communicate with them and see if you can hear them. See if you can hear your significant other.
Yeah, it's very emotional. Um, Giving him a hug and saying that I miss him.
Yes, absolutely.
He's saying, good job, and I'm trying to find out when all of this is going to come to a close, and he says soon.
Wonderful. So now that you're able to communicate with him, um, is this place where you are with him a Pleiadian planet?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can he confirm which one it is?
um, I'm getting to get to for the star system, the star, but Myroba, I think, is coming.
Okay.
It's coming in.
My
Something with an M sounding.
okay.
We're kind of communicating telepathically, so he's,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Perfect. So,
yeah.
can he explain to us your role in the Galactic Federation?
He says that he's telling me telepathically you came in under cover,
Okay.
and your role was to go in and work in the defense industry, but to be in areas where you would not be noticed
Mm-hmm.
in certain aspects. And he's telling me you're very protected.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, he said that, you had to and still do go through some things, but that it was necessary for you to see and to look back through, also through the timeline.
Mm-hmm. So, is the Federation able to see what you see where you are, where you work?
Yes, he says they're able
Okay.
to.
Was that
um,
part of the idea as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I convey that back, and
Okay. And so, with that said, um, is Tracy's future role still involved in the defense industry?
he's saying yes. And he is saying I am getting a tie to Space Force.
Okay, so definitely with Space Force.
Yeah, she's saying there's a tie there, and
Okay.
with the upcoming, he says upcoming disclosure.
Okay, so is it something that you need to move into quickly?
He says there is time.
Okay.
And he's given me what seems like a warning too, with
Okay.
what's coming, that it's going to be hard for everybody to go through.
Mm-hmm.
But the Federation is here and they're helping.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is it going to be a false flag or is it going to be real?
Says no, it's not going to be real, but it will
Okay.
look real.
It'll seem real. Okay.
It'll
Okay.
seem real, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
don't, yeah, he says soon, but I don't have a time.
Yeah, they can't. They can't. The timelines move so much they are not able to pinpoint time. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next question um, is Tracy's body in stasis right now?
Yes.
Okay. Does she have any other incarnations on Earth other than this one right now as Tracy?
Yes, multiple. Lemuria, even before that, with the Lyrans when they came to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Also as Atlantean, several Atlantean lifetimes too.
Okay. So I understand that that's what's happening right now. It's all happening at the same time. So it's hard to ask this question. But in the timeline that we are right now as Tracy, on this timeline, is she someone else? Is she incarnated as other bodies as well right now in this timeline?
I'm getting an I'm getting a mixed response on that.
Okay.
Seeing that you're also on other planetary systems right now,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
incarnation. So yeah, so
Yeah.
definitely,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So yes. Okay.
yes, yeah, definitely Orion for sure.
Okay. And what are you doing there? Can you tell us what you're doing there?
Oh, I'm working in the Orion and the government system.
Mm.
I work, seems like I'm doing some work on a ship there. I work for a similar federation there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Um,
So doing kind of the same thing you're doing on this Earth.
Similar, yes, but it seems like in this case there's a lot more technology than I would have in my Earth
Mm.
job. There's a lot more technology here. Everything is a lot more holographic on the ship, and the weapons are way more sophisticated
Mm.
than I would that I've dealt with
Mm-hmm.
before on Earth, yes, or that I
Mm-hmm.
know of on Earth.
Right. And so on Orion, is it all what we would call here ET races, or are there humanoid slash humans there?
There's all different kinds in Orion. There's humanoid and there's some aquatic types also, aquatic
Okay.
beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For the most part, a lot of them are humanoid looking, but some have larger heads.
Okay.
There are also some of what we would term grays, but they're not all, yeah, they don't all have a negative aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
they're good ones. And we have a similar problem on Earth, but in Orion, it's spread out over many systems, many different star systems.
Mm.
Earth is concentrated on, for the most part, on one planet, but Orion is a lot more vast, and those wars are ongoing. But yes, I do a similar job
Okay.
in Orion. Yeah.
Okay. And is he able to explain how you're able to divide your consciousness in different parts so that to be able to do that? To be able to like be in different places at the same time?
Yeah, it has to do with, this has to get into the what we would term multidimensional aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you exist kind of simultaneously in all of these different areas. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it operates also off of timelines as well. So although everything appears to be simultaneous, it's there's ways to move forward and backward in time. So what I'm getting for Orion is that those wars have already happened, but there's a connection to Earth in this timeline, and many of these, what has happened in Orion is happening now on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and that has to be played out. The Galactic Federation is helping with that, just as they did in Orion.
Okay.
And this also happened in Lyra as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And similar in with the explosion of Maldak also in the
Okay.
solar system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what is your life like on your home planet where you are in stasis? What's life like there? Do
It's a
people?
beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
um, people live in harmony with nature, but there's also a lot of technology that's used.
Mm-hmm.
So we would call that the free energy type of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's types of fossil fuels being used. It's all free energy, and people in their homes, they operate off of what seems like free energy
Mm-hmm.
and generators. And yeah, it feels very harmonious. It almost feels like what we would think of on Earth as heaven. It feels very much
Beautiful.
like that. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's yeah.
what did you do before you came into this life on Earth?
On this home planet of mine, I was working with the Federation
Mm,
So we
okay.
weren't always there. We would go to different areas
Mm-hmm.
where help was needed.
Okay.
And on the planet, I like to work with healing.
Okay. So you were a healer?
Yes.
Okay.
So energy work,
Okay.
something to do with frequencies, with being able to read frequencies. Um, trying to understand this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being able to use the hands and being able to read frequency signatures. I don't think this is something we have here yet. It's interesting. It's being able to read a individual frequency.
Okay. And is it something that you can start working on here as a healer, or will you stay working for the Federation uh,
I'm
through
kind
the
of getting a
defense?
yeah, I'm getting a little bit of both. I think he's saying that you're going to be able to, sounds like, to do both as we shift into this new consciousness. But he's saying is something that you came in with.
Can he explain further?
Yes, he says that you do this all the time, actually, without knowing it. Saying that you've done it a lot at work, and that ties in, he says, with the feedback also to the Federation. He's saying also the job that I was in prior to this, that I did this a lot. And the reason for that was to meet specific different groups of people. He says that's why I traveled so much and why I was constantly in meetings and working with all different types of systems.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's also saying something about trees, being able to work with trees, or and with their with the frequencies of trees as well. So there's some, it seems like with people, and also with nature.
Mm. Okay.
Something about putting hands on trees, and I'm not sure I understand, but being able to read frequencies. Something with healing as well, with trees.
Okay.
It's interesting. He's also saying something about stones also, being able to, something was working with stones and trees, that's tight linked up too. I don't really understand.
Hmm. So stones as in crystals or regular stones?
Yeah, crystals and regular stones too.
Hmm.
He says that I'm getting this. Some of this was tied in with Atlantis.
Hmm. Okay. Is he explaining to
Yeah,
you how?
yeah. He's kind of telling me telepathically, like there's a way to trees to put crystals around the trees
Mm-hmm.
and stones in a specific way, and that does something with the vibration. And it's a way to bring the energy in and also used for healing.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a certain way to put the stones around the tree?
Mm, yeah.
Do they have to be big stones or regular size?
Um, he's saying it's not so much about the size, but how the pattern, how they're put around the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can implant certain frequencies within the crystals and within the stones also.
Okay.
And then he says this was something we did in Atlantis. And I'm getting before that in Lemuria.
Okay.
Yeah, he says this is common also in other systems too, and something that we had, but we've since lost.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah. He
So I
says the
guess,
more that you work with the trees, the more that you'll see that.
okay. Okay. Very interesting. Okay. So is Tracy's family also tied to the Pleiadian system? Her family here on Earth?
Mm. Says yes, he says yes, your mother, but she doesn't know it. This has to do with DNA.
Okay.
He says when we were little, we came to you. And yes, he says we came to you and we visited you when you were very little.
Mm.
but you closed down that part of you so that you could do the work that you're doing now.
Mm. Okay.
Interesting. He says your grandmother also.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay. So does that have to do with the reason why your mom was reading a book on ETs when she was pregnant?
He says yes.
So what was the book? Does he know what book it was?
I can't. It's trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a book written in the early, it looks like early 70s. It had to do with ETs, but I can't get a
A
picture of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then that means your mom. What was your mom's mission?
He says my mom is a healer in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't realize it, and she also has an ability to read frequencies
Mm.
also.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this is tied in with why she travels so much. It has to do with, it seems like I don't understand this, bringing a frequency to a location.
Right. It's
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
body frequency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she's not aware of that.
Mm.
He says when you talk to her, you make her more aware of it. Yeah, he says due to programming.
Mm-hmm.
He says your grandmother had this too, this ability.
Mm.
Yeah, he says the maternal line that it has to do with the DNA on that side of the family.
Okay. Okay. And is there any way that you can wake them up? What can you do, if anything, to help them remember who they are?
He says you've helped your mother a lot. She is becoming more awake, and your sisters and brother, but they don't understand, so they can't. It's hard for them to wake up. There's still a lot of programming. So they said the more that you can plant seeds, the better.
Mm-hmm.
He said the same thing with work and your job. Just by being there, you're planting the frequency.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very cool. Okay, and I think we talked about this, the other star systems that you're also linked with. I think we said Orion and Lyra.
Yeah.
So let's go to the memories of Atlantis. What was Tracy's role in Atlantis?
Atlantis. I was I think the term is priestess, or part of the healing group working with crystals and with the energy of the planet. Um, and what's happening also in Atlantis parallels somewhat what is happening now on Earth,
Yeah.
specifically the US.
Can you give more detail?
Yes, during the fall of Atlantis, there was many, the frequency of the planet was lowered, and there was a lot of destruction due to misuse of technology and due to, similar to now, although it's hidden right now, but then it was known that there were these negative factions that were fighting for control over the planet. And crystals were planted in places, solar generators, seems like, and that contributed to the destruction, but that many people knew this was going to happen. And they moved to different locations. But it's similar to the US right now with what's going on. However, the frequency now is raising. And it's almost as high as it was during the fall of Atlantis.
Shouldn't it be higher than that?
Should, but when the fall happened, the frequency wasn't necessarily low. It was low, but not as low as it was in your timeline 1,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the frequency has been raising, and it will get higher, but it definitely parallels what happened with Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And during that time, the Anunnaki and reptilian lines were heavily influencing the Earth, and the Pleiadians and the other Syrians and the other ET groups that were here were fighting that, as they are now, but it's different.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the United States contains the freedom codes
Oh,
that are
tell
essentially, yeah.
me more about that.
So that has to do with crystals that are embedded within the Earth, but specifically locations in the US itself. And those were planted long ago in anticipation for this time that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, a lot of souls that are here right now planted those crystals, and those get activated also in certain locations with certain gatekeepers and grid workers.
Mm. Okay. Interesting. So, what skill sets does Tracy have that she could best serve humanity as we move forward into this new earth?
She has the ability to read frequencies, but doesn't understand how to use that ability.
Mm-hmm.
She does it without knowing, but to heal someone, the energy has to be focused. And the reading of frequencies also can happen with the energy work as well, with using the hands to do that. I'm not sure I understand, but the healing part also has to do with the earth.
Mm. Can he explain more
Trees.
on that?
This ties back to the trees and working with the energy of the trees and the earth itself, and crystals and stones that are placed around the trees. So there's some way to harness that energy
Mm-hmm.
and use that also for healing. Yeah, he says, you know how to do this, and you've done this before.
Can he remind you? Can he remind you of how to do it? Because they love,
Yes.
they love to tell us that we remember, but we don't.
Yes.
So
Um,
can he remind you?
yeah, he's saying that you can, when you place those in certain placements around the tree, but that you have to work with the trees. You have to get out in nature more.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you do that, the more that will come to you.
Okay.
He's saying right now the focus is elsewhere, but if you focus on that and spend time in nature and working with the trees, you will remember. And he says there's others that know this as well.
Mm. Okay. So okay, so then what he's telling you, um, is that helping with the memory?
Yes, it is. I'm remembering, I see especially Atlantis being able to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to do with circular circles around, planting these crystals around the tree, and implanting the crystal also with frequencies,
Specific frequencies?
before specific frequencies, yes,
Mm-hmm.
beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to have a certain resonance with that.
And then what does that do? Like the tree starts like emitting a certain frequency for everybody around it, or like
Yes, yes,
the
yeah. It's for healing, and also he says you are able to pull the energy. Also, when the tree broadcasts this energy, it's kind of like I was comparing it to a kind of a Wi-Fi
Mm-hmm.
broadcast,
Mm-hmm.
and those are beneficial frequencies also that can be emitted, and it can also be used for healing too, for people. So you could take that energy that's also released. I'm still not understanding all of this, but that's released also from the tree into the crystal. So there's it's kind of, it seems like a feedback loop.
Mm.
And it seems like it's not, I don't know if it's all trees or, yeah, I'm getting all, but I'm getting the bigger trees um, harness more energy. And it also has to do, he says, with the ley lines that are in certain areas as well, in the grid system, although that is changing.
Mm. Okay. Wow, I can't
Yes.
imagine what the redwoods would do.
Yeah, he says, I'm getting that image showing me Lemuria and Lemurian times. We had, everything was bigger as far as the trees and plants, and there was just a knowing of how to do this. Yeah, he says you're reminded of that when you see large trees, when you see large oak trees, or anything redwoods, any of that. He says that's why you're drawn to trees.
Ah, okay. Does the connection of the trees being connected to each other underground also do something? Like if you put this frequency on the tree, does it also now propagate that through the root system to the other trees to also do the
Yes,
same?
yes, it does. And it has, he's saying specifically with the way that you put those crystals and stones around the tree, and your frequency and intention.
Mhm. Okay.
Saying this will be a part of the new earth,
Mhm.
remembering how to
Yeah,
do this.
yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So do we have enough information now to do that, to start doing that here? Do you feel you have enough information to start doing that here?
I do. And he's kind of laughing at me. He says you need to get get out in nature. He says you
Mm-hmm.
need to take the time and the focus on that. He said this other stuff is, it's important right now, it's going on, but that this is also important.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you can change the whole future
Yeah.
of the planet by doing this. This is huge.
Yeah. And he says a lot of grid workers and gatekeepers, they have this ability. A lot of us, he says, do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar to what he says gatekeepers and grid workers do right now. He says they just keep it quiet.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay.
He's saying free energy also will be a part of this.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Are there any health issues that you need to address that we need to be aware of?
Yes. Saying the lower back, um, lower back area,
Hmm.
um,
What's going on there?
getting lots of pain. He says this chiropractor will help. Um, and he also says to get outside,
Hmm.
be in nature, that there's too much indoors, and that has an effect on frequency and on health. He's
Okay.
also saying to fast. The
Okay.
free energies that are coming in, it's important for people as much as they can, if they to fast, to allow the energy to process through and not have to be used for other things.
Okay. Does exercise affect the the energy in the body as well? So if we exercise too much, then the energy is being used for that, or doesn't really apply?
He says it's also good to exercise, but not excessive.
Hmm.
Yeah, he says going out and being in nature, and walking.
Hmm.
He's laughing. He says that that's what we do here a lot
Mm.
on the home planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not so easy for people that live in the cold weather and have snow and stuff.
No, it's not.
So, talking about that, then what is the best place for you to move to?
He's saying somewhere where you can be around. It's important to be surrounded by nature. So he does say trees to help work with them. And he also says water,
Hmm.
near water. So yes, Florida does seem like a good location.
Okay.
He's not Miami area. He says that's
Mm-mm.
not good, but he says areas that you were already thinking of will be fine, and areas where they have says the trees are really important for some reason. He says it's important that you're surrounded by those. And he said water also has a healing effect. He says there's also been work in the past with dolphins,
Hmm.
and that they're helping us right now also on the planet, the dolphins and the whales.
Okay. Yeah, we see dolphins off the Florida coast a lot, very often.
He says
Okay.
there's also a tie in there too with the past, with working with dolphins.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, he says many of us have done that. He says especially a lot of that came from the Syrian system as well.
Hmm. So so you're saying working with the dolphins as in what can we do with them?
This also ties in with frequencies.
Right.
Yeah, with the frequencies they emit,
Hmm.
and being around them, and also being around them though in the wild, in nature, not in a
Yeah.
confined space. But yeah, he says being around them, and that just has something to do with the frequency exchange. And he also says communication with them,
Mm. Okay.
and that's something that we used to be able to do as well. And it has to do with telepathy, and there's a frequency aspect to that as well.
Wonderful.
It seems like with sound healing.
Hmm. Wonderful. The next question is if you are going to meet someone to share your life with here on Earth.
I'm getting that's a tough question.
Of course.
Um, he's saying that you are not open to that, and it would have to be somebody that's on your um, same frequency, vibrational level,
Hmm.
to be compatible. But he's saying for now, no.
Okay.
But he's laughing. He's saying that's a tough question to
Of course.
to ask.
Of course. So is that why you have the tendency to push people away?
He says yes. He says you're very. There's a lot of times when you just want to be here and you shut down, but he says it's also important to remember that you came here for a reason, and to there's times when you need to be alone, but times when you also need to be around people, and that also helps raise the vibration. But make sure that it's people that are moving into the new consciousness.
Hmm. Okay. Um, why has she been very tired this week?
This has to do with a combination of things, but again, not getting out in nature, and not also interacting with individuals that are not on, that are of a lower frequency vibration. And he says, oh, that's not always good.
Mm.
But he says, I know that. But he says that lowers your vibration, and that also affects health, affects frequency. So he's saying to step away from some things,
Mm. Okay.
people that I may be involved with, so that I can stay higher vibration.
Yes.
Yeah, he's saying that,
Including family, I'm sure.
yes, he's saying that some of these people may have started off with good intentions, but they've, yeah, he says it's not, some of the stuff that I'm following is not is not beneficial for the soul growth right now.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he says I push too hard, but he's laughing because I do that there too. He says that's part of the warrior side, but there's a time and a place for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So, does he think that that's why your attention is placed on current events right now? Is it
Yes,
that
he said,
warrior side?
yes, he said that it's tied in with a lot of lifetimes working with military and different star systems and being in this federation for a long time. It's tied in with that, and also sometimes trying to push too hard when maybe people don't. Trying to explain, he's saying you're trying too hard sometimes to wake people up, and sometimes your focus is on too many different things, and to go within more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do Tracy and I know each other up there?
He says, yes, you do. He says, interesting. So he says that we've worked together, and Elena,
Mm-hmm.
um, so he says many of the people that you were drawn to, you have worked with, and they are all working together. Um, he also says Nina, um, Magenta. He says many of the people that you do listen to, they said it's important to remember that where they're vibrating at in their consciousness level.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he says Nina is tied to the Pleiadian system, but that I know that already. But he said a lot of you have worked together in the Federation. And you're all being drawn together right now for this specific time.
Yes. So, what was the main reason why Tracy felt she needed to have this session? Was it for you to deliver messages, or was it to be activated, or what was the main reason for her feeling like she had to have this session?
For her to remember partly to remember where she came from, and also for her to activate and bring these skill sets online that she has, and for her to learn to trust herself.
Okay.
He says you're
Wonderful.
very intuitive, but a lot of times you don't trust it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wonderful. Is there any way we can heal the alcoholism in her family? Like, as you know, time doesn't exist. So, are we able to do something with her ancestors to heal that in that timeline?
he says that we're healing a lot of this right now with setting our intention and with moving into this new consciousness and looking back and not holding attachment
Mm-hmm.
to that. He says many of these things are being healed now, genetic lineages, looking over and back and through the timelines.
Yes.
He says there's even a healing that will need to happen with the negative ET factions as well, and with their lineages.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I never thought about that. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, as he's saying, they will need to be healed, as many of the people on Earth will. It's many of the things that are happening on Earth will have effects out into the galaxy itself
Mm-hmm.
and really into the universe.
Mm. Wow. So when Tracy was having a dream of hugging some beings around a statue with a sense of missing them, was that you guys, her family there?
He's saying yes. He's laughing because he's looking at me and he says, "But you know that."
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
He said, "Yes, he says, yes, that's memories of here and that's us." And he says, "We are always with you. And we're protecting you."
So those of us that I have noticed that those of us that are working for the Galactic Federation have a lot of protection, but I've also noticed that there are some Pleiadians who aren't necessarily working for the Galactic Federation, and it almost feels like they don't, not that they don't have protection, but that they have been infiltrated by the reptilians. Do you know anything about that? Is that like a correct statement?
He says this one is somewhat complex, as there are many different groups with many competing agendas, and the Pleiadian system is very large.
Mhm.
So, and also he says that it seems like sometimes with the programming in reference to the reptilians that can come into play, and if the person is not a clear channel, it can also comes in with the they can let other things get in the way of the ego, and that allows for, I guess, opens the door for negative beings to take over.
Mhm. Oh, so that can happen even if they have protection.
Yeah, he said if the person is not, that they can come in. He said that you have to be able to maintain your frequency. Not everybody can do that. And he also says sometimes other factors come in, substance abuse and alcoholism also will open that door up.
Mm.
So that's why it's important, he says, not to, just or to stay away from that type of stuff.
Mhm.
It lowers your vibration.
Mm. Wow.
But he says a combination, but he says for the most part, the people working for the Federation are very well protected and are on their mission. And he says that has to be that way for what's coming.
Yeah. Okay. And does he feel like what's coming will be this year?
Yes, he says soon, and he says that, but you know that, but you've been getting those messages, but he says soon, he says, and it's going to be hard and difficult, and that's why the light workers are here to help hold that vibration and to help people that need help. And he said it's important to not get into fear with what's coming. It's not real, and to comfort those around us. He said that's the best thing that we can do right now as light workers, and focus on the new earth. But we are going to need to hold an extreme amount of compassion for people that are
Okay.
that are asleep.
Okay. So is there anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he's laughing again at me because he says he knows me very well. You're not always good about that.
Right.
So
So how can you connect with him more directly?
he says, just think of me and put that image in your mind. And now that you have the vision of the planet, to put that in your mind. And he said you can go anywhere, but he said I am always with you.
Okay. Does Tracy have an implant that for like to be kept track of as far as health or anything like that?
I'm getting no on that.
Okay.
So he says no, but we are able to track by, he says, frequency. So not sure I understand that either. There's no tracker, but he says we're able to, something about a direct connection.
Mm, okay.
Interesting.
So that reminds me of another question I had. Has the army ever put trackers on her when they inoculated her?
He's saying no. He's saying you were well. He's saying that you were well protected. He says it's one of the reasons that you had to forget when you were very young, so that you could do that. So he said that there was something like he's explaining, I don't understand this either, but some kind of veil that was put over. So he said, yes, you've had vaccines, but you've not had a tracker put in,
Okay.
like typical the military vaccines, but
Mm,
but he says some people that they're aware of have had those put in.
yes.
Yeah. But he said that we knew that with you and with others coming in, so that you were well protected,
Okay.
or something like a veil or something, so that they wouldn't know.
Hmm. That you were special.
Yes.
Maybe they lowered your vibration at the time or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
he said it's also why, one of the reasons also why you are by yourself a lot. He also says that has something to do with it.
Mm. Is it protection for your vibration?
He says that part of it has to do with protection.
Mm. Okay. All right. And is that the idea of not having children, is that also uh, was it for a reason, or just like in this life it just wasn't
Yeah,
necessary?
he says that wasn't necessary for coming in at this time, and he says in your role that would have not helped, it would have hindered your mission.
Yeah.
So he says that's why, and he's laughing. He says that's a tough one too, being tied to also family there and home planet. But he said that's the main reason, to help fulfill your mission.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Is there anything you can do for her sciatica? Is there any type of, can we take her to a med bed maybe there? Can we?
Yes, he said med beds will help everybody on many different levels. But right now he says continue to do what you're doing, see a chiropractor, and try not to sit so much, and especially at work.
Okay.
And he keeps bringing up the nature, so I understand that that's important.
Hmm.
He says it's important for everybody to, especially at this time, to get out in nature, and even though it's cold in areas, to try to get out as the frequency rises.
Hmm. Okay. Wonderful. We definitely will tell people to do that. So, do you have any other parting messages for Tracy?
He says just know that you are loved and cared for, and we are winning. He says, and just know that, and know that this is coming to a close very soon, and all will be better very soon.
Wonderful news. Wonderful, wonderful news. Okay, awesome. Okay, so are we complete for today?
Yes.